We invite you to visit the Olympic National Park, which is located in the heart of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. Tourists come from all over the world to visit this incredible place, rich with natural wonders. In its area, there are numerous climatic zones, each with its own incredible scenery. Nature, hiking, and adventure enthusiasts flock to Olympic National Park. It was founded in 1938 by President Theodore Roosevelt and is one of the most popular conservation areas on the West Coast, albeit it yields in comparison to such tourism giants as Yellowstone. On the park's grounds, you can witness not only a diverse range of flora, but also rare species of fauna that are found nowhere else in the world. Pacific beaches, rainforests, lakes, alpine meadows and valleys, high cliffs, and snow-capped mountains can all be found here. Ordinary travelers looking for a respite from the city in the midst of nature, as well as the most ardent nature lovers, will find something to do here. We invite you to immerse yourself in the natural diversity of the famous Olympic Park with us. Explore its most popular trails, ancient forests covered with moss, and the coast of the Pacific Ocean. In 1897 by executive order, and for the next 3 years it was explored by surveyors Arthur Dodwell and Theodore Rickson. They made the first exact map and described the forests in detail. Attempts to preserve the Olympic territory began in 1904 when Congressman Francis W. Cushman introduced a bill to create the Elk National Park. The bill failed. In 1906 and 1908, Congressman William E. Humphrey introduced bills to set up a game shelter on the Olympic Peninsula. However, these draft laws also failed. 2 days before the term of Theodore Roosevelt's administration came to the end, he asked the president to create a national monument in the Olympic Mountains due to the Antiquities Act of 1906. A presidential declaration in 1909 established Mount Olympus National Park. The monument was inside of the Olympic National Forest. From 1909 to 1933, it was managed by the Forest Service, United States Department of Agriculture. Attempts to create a national park during the Olympic Games were resumed in 1935. Representative Monrad C. Walgren has repeatedly tabled bills to do so, but initially unsuccessful. In 1937, President Roosevelt visited the Olympic Peninsula and approved the creation of a big Olympic National Park. The Act of June 9, 1938, set up a national park and canceled Mount Olympus National Monument. The park now covers an area of 1,400 square miles. Every year, more than 3 million people visit this distant part of the United States. One would assume that the place is packed, filled to the brim with hikers, backpackers, and nature lovers from all over the world. However, the reality in Olympic National Park is that the majority of visitors can see a small portion of its nearly 1 million acres of wilderness. Most will flock to Hurricane Ridge, Solduck Falls, Lake Crescent, the Hoh Rainforest, and the rugged beaches of La Push. But one region is home to the best backpacking in the country, and one of the most iconic sites in the park. The Quillute rainforest, which receives over 12 feet of rain yearly and hides some of the best wildlife views, is just in front of you. Highlighted by Lake Quillute, the Quillute rainforest sits on the western edge of the park, giving those who make their way to this isolated corner access to some of the most sacred and beautiful hiking destinations in the world. Trails in the area weave through giant ferns, pass under huge old-growth cedar and fir trees, and even lead to mountain peaks, glaciers, and pristine valleys. The Quillute rainforest is more than just a destination. It's a backpacking paradise. "13 and a half miles from the Graves Creek campground along the Quillute River, the Enchanted Valley sits quietly under the shadow of the Olympic Mountains. Backpackers who make the jaunt to this wilderness paradise are rewarded with views of black bears, elk herds, and breathtaking waterfalls. The Enchanted Valley Trail is one of those rare trails that takes you deep into Olympic National Park and the mountains without much difficulty. The trail winds along the east fork of the Quillute River through old-growth forests and eventually delivers you to the eponymous Enchanted Valley, where a guest chalet sits along the river. Whether you only head out for a short stroll to Pony Bridge to see the blue-green waters of the Quillute River, or head all the way into the valley and up to the expanse of Anderson Pass, this trail will enthrall all tourists with its breathtaking beauty. And it's perfect for kids and families. The mellow elevation changes and plentiful campsites make it a great choice for a day hike or a first-time backpacking trip with the whole family. And due to its moderate elevation and low altitude, the Enchanted Valley is accessible early in the year, eliminating the need to wait for the snow to melt. The Quinault rainforest is estimated to receive anywhere from 12 to 16 feet of rain each year, the majority falling between the months of October and May. Moisture is evident everywhere. Clouds, fog, and forest growth help keep temperatures moderate in summer and winter. This moisture and the moderate temperatures ensure plant growth and provide habitat for a wide variety of critters year-round. And it's the rainfall that makes this area unique. Due to the frequent rains, the surrounding vegetation has grown to an incredible age and size throughout the millennia. The Quinault River Valley and Rainforest is home to Washington State's largest trees. The biggest hemlock in the world is only 2.1 miles upstream of the Enchanted Valley Chalet. Huge Douglas fir, western red cedar, and Pacific silver fir will accompany you on this trail. These giant conifers, along with the large leafy maples and alders along your path, will delight anyone visiting the Quinault rainforest for the first time. A dense blanket of moss and ferns gives a bright green hue to this beautiful landscape. Red hummingbirds and bees sip nectar from the flowers of Indian plum, blueberry, and wild blackberry. A variety of wildflowers and bright berries add their special colors to the Enchanted Valley. Invisible ties connect everything in this wonderful green system. As the trail passes through ancient forests with sword ferns, you can see glimpses and landscapes of the pond. The colors of the Quinault River are added to the colors of the rainforest. The Quinault meanders from side to side. The river's dynamic force changes the forested benches or slopes to a gravel bar and causes biological systems to be uprooted and moved. The actual riverbed only covers a small portion of the valley land. The benches and river bars that the floodwaters carve out and form are the core of land development for the forest and wetlands. The inhabitants of this large region also have many common cultural traits, but probably the most distinctive of them was a reverence for natural wealth. However, the relationship of each indigenous nation with the peninsula is unique. 9 indigenous tribes of the Olympic Peninsula include Hoh, Skokomish, Squaxin Island, Elwha Clallam, Jamestown Sklallam, Port Gamble Sklallam, Quinault, Quillute, and Macaw, and all have a common history of trade and wars. These people have shown nice skill in using the natural resources of the peninsula, even with the most primitive tools. For example, dug canoes of local Indians made from tree trunks were among the best. This wonderful culture existed mainly because the environment provided a wealth of all vital things. Food was easy to get, and 3 to 4 months of collection was enough per year. Fish was the main food product. Every summer, the streams of the Olympic Peninsula were full of salmon, which was trapped on the water. The diet was complemented by berries and roots from the forests. Meat was provided by elk, deer, and birds. Some Olympic Indians hunted seals, guinea pigs, and whales. Catching of the whales required sea trips in dugout canoes 30 to 40 feet long, which held 6 to 8 people. The great forests of the peninsula were vital to the economic life of the Indians. Cedars were used for canoe hulls or split into wood for houses. Baskets, mats, sails, ropes, clothes, and other household items were made from cedar bark. Most of the year, Indians lived in villages based above the beaches along the ocean or sea bays, usually at the mouth of rivers. Their permanent houses were solidly constructed from planks. Some of these rectangular buildings, designed to accommodate multiple families, were more than 60 feet long and 30 to 40 feet wide. A lot of them were nicely decorated with paintings. In summer, these people used to migrate inland to pick berries and hunt, or along rivers to fish. By original standards, the Indians of the Northwest Coast were rich. That is, they had a choice of what to eat, what to dress in, and a variety of options for sheltering from bad weather. They also had a lot of winter rest. This compound of wealth and leisure gave rise to an amazing political and social system in which power and prestige tended to belong to the richest people. An important trait of the social structure was the distribution of property during a banquet called a potlatch. Years or even a lifetime of savings were often tolerated in order to collect enough wealth for this purpose. Guests from many tribes were invited. The host of the celebration gave such precious presents as canoes, slaves, food, fishing equipment. As a rule, gifts were given only to those guests who could afford to give back. Giving gifts was a good investment for the host because the receiver was supposed to give a larger gift in return. This act of giving property lifted the giver and his family in a social scale. Wealth was measured not by what the Indians possessed, but by a greater extent of what was given. In recent years, the Bureau of Indian Affairs pressured to hinder the potlatch system, and it has collapsed significantly. But the tradition of giving still persists in modified form on some reservations. Current situation in Indian villages along the Olympic Peninsula is nothing like it was a century ago. Cedar communal houses are no longer being built, and because the climate is not conducive to conservation, old patterns of former Indian homes have disappeared. The clothes of white men have replaced the clothes of leather and crushed bark. Customs have also changed under the influence of modern civilization. Nevertheless, much of the old Indian tradition has remained, although this may not be noticeable on the surface. The main source of existence for local tribes is fishing. The Indians still prefer to use canoes, but now they are usually powered by outboard motors. Almost every family has a canoe, however, only some experienced makers build them. They are similar in design to ancient canoes, but the tools used to carve them are steel, not stone, shell, or bone, which were used for blades in primitive tools. In summer, Exciting canoe rides along the Quinault River are available for an average fee. Along the Quinault, the steady sound of a timeless river is only interrupted by the wind through the forests, the rain on the ferns and damp soil, or the sounds of elk. Take a few minutes to appreciate the erosion dug in by the ever-shifting course of the Quinault River. The chalet, which sits 100 feet away from the eroded bluff, was moved to its current position in 2014 after nearly collapsing in the river. The chalet sits in Enchanted Valley, often dubbed the Valley of 1,000 Waterfalls for the massive amounts of water which pours down the rocky cliffs during the spring melt. However, the river's water levels have recently reached unprecedented lows, as it was supplied by the Anderson Glacier, which melted before 2011. Given the extreme humidity and regularity of rains in this location, you may wonder when is the best time to arrange your trip on this path to take in all of the valley's splendor. When is the ideal time to go to the Enchanted Valley? The Olympic Peninsula is known for getting lots of rain, but planning a visit during the summer months will give you a pretty decent chance of having sunny and dry weather. Regardless of the time you visit, it's always a good idea to carry along some rain protection. You can do this hike as early as May without having to worry about traversing lots of snow. That said, you'll need to be prepared to encounter mud, and you want to stick to the valley trails and forgo any major river crossings or mountain passes deeper in the valley. June is a beautiful time to witness the many waterfalls in the valley, rushing at their full force with early season snowmelt. During the months of August and September, berries will be plentiful along the trail, but depending on the year, you may deal with some wildlife smoke. Keep in mind that during the summer period, there will be more visitors. The Quinault River is a quiet place for those seeking solitude the majority of the year, with the exception being the summer months. During the rest of the year, seeing another hiker is an experience few and far between. Out on the Quinault and in the Enchanted Valley, solitude and enjoyment of wilderness awaits those who backpack to this sacred destination. Along the Quinault, the steady sound of a timeless river is only interrupted by the wind through the forest, the rain on the ferns and damp soil, or the sounds of elk. Sometimes it seems that the Quinault turns conversations on mute, with the majority of hikers unconsciously whispering, so as not to interrupt the beautiful singing of the water. Mile after mile, wilderness erupts in every direction, overwhelming those who reside in the city. With no car, planes, or cell phone service, the sounds of nature calm and soothe any and all who are looking for relaxation. The solitude and disconnect with the world can be intense for some, but revitalizes your soul and fills it with the life-giving energy of nature. Due to the huge area of the park, the weather varies greatly upon location. The mountain's western slopes receive heavy precipitation and support an old-growth temperate rainforest, the largest of its kind in the Western Hemisphere. The forest floor is densely carpeted with mosses, lichens, and ferns, while a variety of epiphytes grow on the trees. Large yellow Pacific banana slugs, 6 to 8 inches long, are frequently seen in the rainforest. The eastern slopes of the mountain massif with less precipitation are not as thickly forested as the west and feature lakes and meadows. It covers 1,442 square miles, much of which is surrounded by the Olympic National Forest. Although European explorers had visited the peninsula in the late 18th century, it wasn't until 1885 that the first expedition into the mountainous interior was made. The first white people who explored the Olympic Peninsula arrived by sea. It's believed that Spanish navigators who set sail from Mexico to the north could have come to the coast back in the 16th century. Juan de Fuca told that he had entered the channel known by his name in 1592, but there is no evidence of this discovery. However, a large-scale study of the northwest coast began only in the second half of the 18th century, when rumors that Russians were heading south from Alaska prompted the Spaniards to make a new effort. In 1774, during the first of these renewed journeys, Juan Perez saw the current Mount Olympus and called it Santa Rosalia. He was the first European who named a geographical site in what is now Washington State. Over the next 25 years, the northwest coast, including the coast of the Olympic Peninsula, was extensively explored and mapped by the Spanish, English, and Americans. The Spanish were the first who stepped on the peninsula. During the journey of Bruno Heceta and Juan de la Bodega y Quadra in 1775, Heceta landed on Cape Grenville near the mouth of the Quinault River. Captain James Cook was one of the first English navigators to explore the northwest coast. In 1778, during his seeking for the Northwest Passage, he named Cape Flattery in the northwest corner of the peninsula. While being on the coast, some Cook's crew members received furs from the locals and later sold them in China for high prices. This event made English and American businessmen pay attention on the Northwest Pacific, and later the exploration of this area was stimulated by the fur trade. In 1778, Captain John Mears, an English merchant, saw a mountain which was named by Perez 14 years before. He didn't know about the previous discovery, so he named the top Olympus. Juan Francisco de Eliza, a Spanish captain, entered the channel of Juan de Fuca in 1791 and named the harbor where modern Port Angeles is located, Puerto de Nuestra Senora de Los Angeles, which means Port of Our Lady of Angels. The next year, the Spanish set up a fort and settlement in Nia Bay. Representatives of this colony, which existed for just 5 months, were the first white settlers to touch the land of the Olympic Peninsula, and in fact, Washington State. In 1792, Captain Robert Gray, an American merchant, opened a harbor on the southern outskirts of the Olympic Peninsula, which was later named after him. Among all the explorers who came by sea, George Vancouver, the English sailor, left the biggest mark in northwestern Washington. In 1792, he explored the waters of Puget Sound and named plenty of geographical sites, including Port Townsend and the Discovery Bay on the Olympic Peninsula. At the same time that sea merchants and explorers were discovering the features of the coast, other adventurous people were opening land routes to the northwest. By 1810, fur traders who followed Alexander Mackenzie, David Thompson, Lewis and Clark had established themselves well in modern British Columbia and the Columbia River Basin. After 1821, the British-controlled Hudson's Bay Company dominated the fur trade in the Pacific Northwest and effectively excluded competitors from the region for several years. But in the 1830s and 1840s, American merchants, missionaries, and settlers moved more and more northwest. British impact decreased as the American population grew, until, in 1846, the United Kingdom left no hope of owning the region as far as the Columbia River. That year, The 49th parallel was established as the border between American and British territory west of the Rocky Mountains. Until that time, some American settlers have established houses on the north coastline of the Columbia River. After setting the border, the pioneers quickly moved into the Puget Sound Basin. Some of them settled in Port Townsend in 1851. Despite the fact that Port Townsend was the first stable settlement on the peninsula, two beastlings named John Sutherland and John Everett crossed the channel from Victoria in 1849 and used traps on two large lakes west of Port Angeles. One lake is still called Sutherland. The other, originally called Lake Everett, is now known as Lake Crescent. The first constant settlers in the Port Angeles area did not claim their rights until 1857. Settlement of the Olympic Peninsula was slow, and the mountains were unknown for a few decades. In spite of that, the first ascent to the Olympus was made in 1854. The first real effort to explore the Olympic Mountains were made in 1885 on an expedition led by a lieutenant of the 14th Infantry Regiment, Joseph P. O'Neill. The explorers started at Port Angeles, walked the way past Mount Angeles to Hurricane Ridge. They came back the same way after exploring the country to the southeast, probably to the head of the Lillian River. The next crucial expedition to the Olympic Mountains was offered by a 27-year-old editor of the Seattle Press, Edmund Meany. On his initiative, the newspaper published an article on October 23, 1889, which drew attention to this unknown land and the need to explore it. Meany convinced the press to fund the expedition, and James H. Christie, a former hunter, Indian fighter, and Arctic explorer, organized the party. In December 1889, the company began rising up the Elwha River. People thought that the mountains visible from the coast were only the outer edge, inside which there was a central valley, and beginning in the winter, the expedition expected to overcome the first range and start exploring the valley when spring arrived. This lack of knowledge about the true nature of the mountains could have led to the tragic end of the expedition if the researchers had not been experienced and ingenious. Six months later, the group emerged from the mountains at Lake Quinault, enduring serious difficulties. They had paved a rough path through the heart of the unknown Olympics. They brought back photos and an approximate topographical map of the area. They told about local plants, animals, and minerals, named 50 peaks, rivers, lakes, and other monuments. A lot of these names remain today. The Elwha River Press Valley was named after the newspaper that funded the expedition, and the Bailey Range was named after William H. Bailey, the newspaper's owner. Mount Meany preserves the name of the young city editor, and Mount Christie and Mount Barnes honor properly the leader and organizer of the expedition. Researchers of the press came out of the forest only a few weeks later when another expedition was organized. The Alpine Club of Oregon provided a scientific staff and a lot of the money. The Army allocated Lieutenant O'Neill to lead the group and soldiers to assist. In the summer of 1890, this expedition crossed the Olympic Mountains from the Hood Canal to Lake Quinault through the Skokomish and Quinault rivers. They have also marked many geographical objects. O'Neill Pass and O'Neill Creek were named after the leader, Mount Henderson after the botanist of the group, and Mount Brotherton after a naturalist cartographer. In his speech, O'Neill noted, "Even though the area on the outer slope of these mountains is valuable, the interior is useless for any practical purpose." However, this area will serve perfectly for the national park. These expeditions encouraged settlements on the outskirts of the Olympic Peninsula and in the river valleys. They also contributed to further exploration of the hinterland and awareness of the vast recreational resources of this mountain strip. From massive conifers over 20 stories tall to minute clumps of pink douglasia prying a life out of rocky peaks, the Olympic Peninsula and Olympic National Park boast an amazing diversity of plant life. Over 1,450 types of vascular plants grow on the peninsula, nearly the same number as the British Isles, an area 30 times larger. In addition, hundreds of species of non-vascular mosses. Why so much diversity? The park and surrounding Olympic Peninsula have snowy peaks that plunge to mist-shrouded coast. Misty temperate rainforest on the west side lies only 34 miles from dry oak savanna in the rain shadow northeast of the mountains. These quick changes in elevation and precipitation mean a lot of different habitats are crowded into the area. The climate in the Olympic National Park is moderate and subalpine in the higher belt of the mountains. Summer's not hot, but it is long and refreshing. The park is situated on a peninsula surrounded on 3 sides by water. So, we get a lot of snow in the winter and a lot of rain in the summer. All these characteristics combine to create a one-of-a-kind natural phenomenon: temperate rainforests. The word temperate leads to the idea that they are no different from the forests of the middle belt we're used to, but the term rain refers to the tropics of South America. The forests of the Olympic National Park combine the features of northern and southern nature. Conifers such as Douglas fir, western hemlock, and western arborvitae are massive trees with towering crowns. Individual hemlocks can live for hundreds of years, and their trunks can reach several meters in diameter. Maples predominate among the hardwoods. The southern feature of forests is the presence of epiphytes, plants growing on the surface of trees. Mosses and lichens are the most common examples. They cover the trunks and branches, giving the woodland a jungle appearance due to the amount of moisture and extreme humidity. Despite the dense foliage, navigating through Olympic National Park's woods is owing to well-marked routes. A stroll along such a trail may enthrall not only ardent nature lovers, but also fans of the fantasy genre. The fantastic vistas materialize in front of the tourists. The fauna of these locations is as diverse as the vegetation. Many insects, snails, and salamanders can be found on the forest floor due to the high moisture content. Songbirds, owls, chipmunks, and martins shelter in tree limbs. Cougars, black bears, black-tailed deer, and elk are among the major inhabitants of the forest. While there are numerous and frequently crossing roads, moose prefer a more isolated existence and are rarely seen by people. These ungulates, by the way, are members of a unique subspecies known as the Roosevelt elk, which can only be found in this park. We'll learn more about these magnificent animals throughout our documentary. Furthermore, these are not only endemic species found in these areas. Olympic National Park is the unique refuge in the world for additional species and subspecies of animals in addition to elk. Olympic grasshoppers, Olympic salamanders, Olympic ermines, and Olympic marmots should be mentioned among them. The Olympic marmot is the most approachable for contemplation among the latter. These little creatures can be seen in the park's highlands during the summer. The snow goat is another unique creature that dwells here. This lovely creature is difficult to track down. And your encounter with the animals should come to an end at the coast. Many starfish and sea anemones may be seen during low tide. Best seen during low tide, the Washington Coast's Olympic beaches give those who make the drive west access to some of the wildest and most beautiful beaches in the world. These beaches are not for sunbathing, but for exploring tide pools, beach combing, backpacking, and hiking along the Pacific Ocean. This is the place with awesome sunsets, incredible history, and hidden secrets. The beaches of the protected area stretch for 117 kilometers. Sand and pebble beaches can be found, and the latter are frequently cluttered with large boulders and tree trunks. This trash has a natural genesis as stones and boulders flow down mountain rivers during storms. With few exceptions, park staff do not clean the beaches since driftwood and deadwood is an important aspect of the ecology. Turbidites are unique geological formations that may be seen on the beaches of the Olympic National Park. These are layers of sedimentary rock that formed on the coast and were compressed by time and weight. They eventually sink into the water under the pull of gravity, producing stony ridges. It looks as if an invisible plow had plowed the shore and disappeared into the depths of the ocean. Turbidites have extensive layers, veinlets, of calcite that give them a white striped look. Needless to say, the beach region is appealing to visitors. Because of their length, the beaches are excellent for swimming. They're ideal for multi-day trips. The most important thing to keep in mind while planning your Rialto Beach hole-in-the-wall hike is the tide times. Hiking hole-in-the-wall at Rialto Beach has sea stacks, tidal pools, and breathtaking beaches. To safely access the tidal pools, you must get to the sea arch within half an hour of low tide, so be sure to plan your hike. One of the most striking features of Rialto Beach, the line of bleached tree skeletons lining the shore, nicknamed the Tree Graveyard. These eerie trees stand like sentinels watching the ocean. These wind-battered Sitka spruce trunks create a border between the beach and the green forest inland. They look a bit like rib bones sticking up from the shore. Tides and storms constantly reshape this beach, so it's different every time you visit. Rialto Beach has an incredible collection of sea stacks. The one closest to the seashore is the most visible. Driftwood casts interesting patterns on the surface of the ocean. You can wander for hours between these bizarre tree fragments and enjoy the sound of the ocean. The park literally has dozens of beaches for you to enjoy, and they all offer endless exploration for travelers and fantastic photo opportunities for sunset lovers and photographers. Marine piers, stumps, and islands are also necessary havens for birds and wildlife. Water is the power. The waves that break over the capes wash off the rocks. The first caves are formed. Then the wind and water break through to the other side, creating an arch. And at the end, when the center of the arch collapses, it turns into a sea rock. Millions of spherical rocks cover the coast. These are usually volcanic rocks with smooth oval edges that have been worn down over time. The Pacific Ocean sea stacks may be seen. The stone headlands where the land met the sea used to include these rocky islands. Eventually, the ocean washed away the soft rocks that surrounded them and left them alone in the water. Rocky beaches, giant drift logs, raging waves, and coastal island landscapes are known as sea stacks, and are the features that define Rialto Beach. The waves of the ocean are constantly crashing on the shore, and this riot gives it a special grandeur, especially in this part of Washington. The sound of the surf and the calm of the coastline take you to another dimension. You'll be charmed by the incredible views of the ocean, the majestic rock formations in the background, and the richness of the rocky, quiet coast. Let's imagine you'll be walking on water, watching pelicans soaring above. You can even see bald eagles. It's worth noting that this beach is teeming with wildlife. In late summer and early autumn, you can see Steller and California sea lions, gray whales, and sometimes killer whales and humpback whales. This sanctuary of the Olympic Peninsula has amazing and unique animals both on the water and on land and in the air. Stories, legends, and recorded history tell of early episodes from the life of the Quillute people, and some of them are directly or indirectly linked to geology. One of the stories of their lifestyle is how they used James Island as a very functional fort against their enemies. James Island, called after one of the James Ho tribes, was at first named Akalokt, meaning way up there or on top of a hill. A dispute between the Quillutes and the Macaws in the north lasted at least 100 years. With only one unreliable route to an almost 5-acre plain, James Island served as a natural fort for the Quillutes. Food grown on the island and water from the springs met most of their needs. Hot water and big boulders thrown overboard were important weapons used by the Quillutes, and the sweeping 180-foot-high walls in particular provided perfect protection. Thus, geology and rock formations played an important part in the welfare of the Quillute people. The land now belongs to the Olympic National Park. It first became a nature sanctuary in 1897. President Grover Cleveland was concerned about deforestation in this region. He defined this area as the Olympic Forest Sanctuary. The Mount Olympus National Monument was created 10 years later. It was founded to protect Roosevelt's elk, which was threatened with extinction. Finally, it became a national park in 1938. 15 years later, other coastal areas were added. Due to the richness of landscapes, the park has a very large and diverse group of animals. It's interesting to note that among them are such animals as the black bear, or humpback whale, and such gentle creatures as the marble murrelet or Olympic marmot. No trip to the reserve is complete without observing the iconic animals of Olympic National Park. Olympic elk, and your chances of watching them in this region are very high. Elk have wandered the lands of the Olympic Peninsula for thousands of years, providing food for the many tribes who call this region home. The elk were also hunted by packs of wolves, which used to roam the region. After westward expansion, the hunting of the elk increased, prompting a need for their protection. Therefore, the more popular name of this beast, the Roosevelt elk, was chosen in honor of the ardent nature activist and 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, who helped protect the elk habitat from overhunting. It is the largest elk in North America, and Olympic National Park is an animal shelter for the largest wild herd in the region. You can meet these beautiful animals throughout the park, from mountain meadows to lowland rainforests. Small herds of 30 cows and calves come together to look for ferns, lichens, and meadow grasses all year round, but bulls, as a rule, live alone. It should also be noted the importance of elk in the tropical forests of the peninsula. From spring to autumn, the Roosevelt elk eat ferns, shrubs, lichens, and grasses, helping to reduce undergrowth and create healthier forest cover. Thanks to their trampling around open areas, the growth of shrubs and bushes is maintained and in control. Elk stay in the Quillute rainforest throughout the year, finding plenty of food and water. Elk usually eat plants from the barks of trees in the winter months. Sometimes Olympic visitors saw Roosevelt elk eating blueberries, mushrooms, and salmon. Herds live with their families and travel to familiar areas in search of food. They also travel from one river runoff to another. Elk females are mostly kept together to raise their offspring safely and help each other care for their children. Mature males wander separately from their herd, minimizing mating. The typical call of males is either a call for a fight or a warning for the smaller ones to retreat. And the call of the female to the calf is very expressive. And it is even more pleasant to listen to how tenderly the calf calls its mother. Such moments of observation of animals are filled with special warmth. While elk can be seen all over the Olympic Peninsula, two destinations will offer you amazing views of the herds: the Quillute and Hoke River valleys, with Hoke more well known. Walking down the local trails, you can see an elk herd in the best and most terrific colors of the rainforest. Roosevelt's elk are usually most active in early morning and again during the evening. However, with cooler autumn weather, the elk can be active at any time, and bulls are trumpeting all day and night. Imagine that you had met a herd of these handsome elk in a glade dotted with sunlight and wildflowers. What an incredible picture! The Olympic rainforests are some of the best places in the world to observe the life of Roosevelt's elk. Everybody loves the Lush region on the Olympic Peninsula. Every year, tens of thousands of people visit the Rialto, First, Second, and Third beaches. But only a few of them know that this area used to be home to dozens of wonderful cedar buildings and totems, and it was mostly isolated from outside impacts until the 1860s. Due to the rocky banks, astonishing sea streams, and the basically remote location of Lush, the Quillute tribe has been left alone by the sailing ships of America and Europe. Ships would sail past Lush without being able to maneuver around large sea stacks and uneven beaches. The second beach trail is one of the most popular trails among tourists in the park. The trail crosses a nice coastal forest of western hemlock and Sith spruce. This easy 2.9-mile trail provides great views during your hike. The best time to walk is mid-spring to early autumn. But in the summer months, the trail can be crowded. Hiking to the coast can hardly be called a hike. The ocean can be reached in just 1.7 miles. By the way, the trail enchants every traveler with the magnificence of nature. With each step, the forest becomes more and more unique. Giant trees grow with many spires, turning forest landscapes into wooded cathedrals. All the way from here, everything has branches and roots. Big stumps are intertwined with the vitality of giant trees. Many people rush the trail to get to the beach, but take your time and make every step unforgettable. As you approach the ocean, the roar of the waves intensifies, and the salty air from the ocean refreshes your face. From here, the trail begins to lose height quickly. A series of turns leads down to the forest wall, to the place where you will see Second Beach. One more step, and you'll find yourself alone with the Pacific Ocean. In front of you are the marine pillars, which are slowly eroding from 100-year storms. To my left, the coast continues past the sea rocks, tide pools, and boundless coast. For a lot of people, the highlight of this amazing beach is the rocky ridge that dives into the ocean up north, dotted with some trees clinging to life against the power of the Pacific Ocean. Right now, you're observing how new sea pillars are being formed. You can see the past, present, and future come together simultaneously. The coastal zone of Olympic Park is popular. In that place, birds can gather and eat together. Anytime, you can see brown pelicans flying north. You'll witness these prehistoric birds making incredible cool dives and plunging into the sea for fish. You can usually see several large groups flying just a few feet above the water in summer. Cheerful arenaria are persistently searching the coastal rocks. Calidris alpina and other coastal birds are exploring the sand in search of small crustaceans. Seagulls and crows are circling everywhere. This beach is a great place to explore the tidal pools. The northern region has a rich tidal community with hundreds of tiny sea creatures that live in rocky waters. Plan your visit at low tide to discover its rich hidden world. Starfish, mussels, anemones, crustaceans, and hermit crabs are among those fighting for their lives from the shock of heavy waves during high tide. Enjoy the views of the Pacific Ocean and scenes of picturesque sea stacks. You should bring binoculars to admire the life of birds, including bald eagles. There is a great likelihood that here you'll notice playful seals and at times whales. If you want to admire whales, you need to come to the beach in March, April, and October during their migration. Thousands of winters before the arrival of the people of the White Drifting House, the Hoquat, the Indians lived and hunted here. Quillutes thrived on territory that originally stretched from their island-laden Pacific beaches along rivers of rainforest to the glaciers of Mount Olympus. Legend says that their only relative, the Chimacum tribe, was washed away by the flood and settled near modern Port Townsend, where they lived until the leader of the Suquamish tribe of Seattle destroyed them in the 1860s, leaving Quillutes without relatives in this world. Thus, the Quillutes were surrounded by unrelated Macaw tribes, Nuchanoth, who migrated from the west coast of Vancouver Island, Sklallam to the northeast along the Juan de Fuca Channel, and Quinault south of Tahoe. Both originated in Salishan. Relations with these groups allowed trade, mixed noble marriages, and a show ceremony, a potlatch, to commemorate the distribution and redistribution of wealth. The traditional life of the Quillutes was a reflection of a complex cultural model that was shared by the natives of the Northwest Coast. Focusing on the ocean, they were fishing and hunting for marine mammals and were known to be the best fishermen on the coast. Their red cedar canoes were engineering masterpieces, ranging from sports models for 2 people to 58-foot ocean freight canoes capable of carrying 3 tons. It's reported that the refined bow and smooth slices of the hull were copied into the design of the hull of the American ship Clipper, which became the fastest in the world at that time. In the early 1900s, canoes, similar to those used by the Quillutes, were equipped with masts and floated around the world. Quillute whaling canoes traveled north to southeastern Alaska and south to California. The Quillutes bred special woolen dogs and spun yarn from their hair for highly prized blankets. Waterproof skirts and capes woven from the soft inner cedar bark and tampered rain hats protected them from 115 inches of rainfall annually that impacted the Quillute country. The Quillutes also weaved numerous types of baskets, some of which were so thin and waterproof that they served as kettles for boiling water or stews. Clothing, weapons, paints and dyes, tools and fillings were made from natural materials that were found at hand or sold from nearby tribes. The Quillute community was formed from home groups made up of all those who occupied one of the large houses at the mouths of the Quillute or Hoh or Goodman Creek during the winter months. Each house had a head. those in line of leadership, the nobility, and commoners. Thus, kinship and blood ties largely determined the early structure of tribal rule. A group of houses could also include a certain number of slaves, captured or sold from nearby tribes. During the summer months, these large squads crushed into families, some of which moved up the river to hunting camps. From the cradle to the funeral canoe, Quillute relied on the help and inspiration of supernatural forces. The defining element of this culture is the Quillute language, which is still spoken by elders in La Push. The basics are also taught at the Quillute Tribal School. It's a complex language, characterized by clicking sounds, supraglottic stops, and tongue-twisting lines of consonants with words that run off the page, such as Kitlaik Wokwok Wolus Stoxelas, which means, "These are people who think I'm the one who is going to Forks." It is one of the 5 languages in the world that does not have nasal sounds like M or N. Quillute is also one of the few languages not associated with any other language. Elders of Quillute watch the compilation of the dictionary and teaching texts that are taught at school. Although European traders were already in contact with the Quillutes back in the 1700s, the first official contacts took place in 1855 when the Quillutes signed a treaty, the Quinault River Treaty, with the staff of the governor of the Washington Territory, Isaac Stevens. A year later, a Quillute delegation went to Olympia to sign an Olympic treaty with the United States. According to this agreement, the Quillutes had to give up their lands and move to a reservation in Tagula. However, the territory of the Quillutes was so remote that there was no pressure to settle their lands. The coast of the Olympic National Park, surrounded by mist, may seem peaceful and lonely. You can light a fire on the beach and enjoy the scenic view of the fiery fire and the sea surf. At times like this, you can completely immerse yourself in the world of sounds and wildlife. It seems that you are alone with the ocean, and the sound of its waves tell its everlasting stories. You fully enjoy the quiet, harmony, and loneliness. But if you look closer, the noisy movement of wildlife abounds at your feet. While the ocean breathes and raises its waves, you can take a closer look at the tides on the wild shores of the Olympics. As well as climbing the park's high peaks and footpaths through the rainforests, tides on the beaches are an excellent way to see the ocean's world of plants and animals. When the tide recedes, the rocky ledges under the waves are exposed. When it happens, ocean water is caught in basins, alcoves, and crevices within the rock surface. Along with the water comes hundreds of the plants and animals that make these pools their home, and the animals that are washed in and stay until the next high tide comes and washes them out. A walk along the edge of these pools allows visitors to see the daily lives of fish, plants, and invertebrates that are unique to the Pacific coastline. Before you go, be sure to review tide chart and safety regulations to better protect yourself and the pools, and keep current with the best places and times to tide pool. In the same way that people live in different regions, so do tidal animals. Some people like a big city, others like the dense forest around their houses, and still others prefer the wide open plains. Clinging to the open rock surfaces, swimming in the glistening pools, and even squeezed snugly between nooks and crannies, life is raging. Numerous animals that live in ponds are invertebrates. Along with the small animals of Olympics tide pools, the waters off the coast of the park provide shelter for a variety of marine animals. Where the waves splash up and crash against the sea boulders, the distinct coiled shell of the common periwinkle, or sea snail, holds firmly. A large number of mollusks grab the rock as they graze on moist algae. Other marine creatures are visible in smooth holes that have been carved out of the rocks. Rocks are becoming a place where mollusks can protect themselves from predators. A bunch of blue and white mussels with shells strapped to the top of large gray ocean rock. During all low tides, the high tide area is exposed as the waters begin to withdraw from the shoreline. As you walk along the rocks to get a closer view into the churning waters, be careful not to step on the acorn and gooseneck barnacles. These animals seem glued to the rock in large numbers, hiding away in protective layers of calcium. Where the tide pools are at their most vibrant, giant green anemones and aggregating anemones flash bright green and pink. Somewhere in the colored patchwork, the distinct oranges, purples, and brick reds of ochre sea stars and other starfish appear. Skittering from pool to pool, the purple-shelled Dungeness crab and hermit crabs can sometimes be seen scavenging amongst the dense sea grasses. Even those that prefer deeper waters, like octopus and fish species, can occasionally find themselves as temporary residents of the many tide pools until the water rises once again. When the water is at its lowest, during a new or full moon, the low tide zone appears. Seldom seen life is finely active and viewable, such as a variety of spiky sea urchins and vibrantly colored nudibranch. Anything in the tide pools is connected, from the largest starfish to the smallest algae. The vibrancy and excitement continue in the form of green eel grasses and iridescent seaweeds that provide cover for a variety of animals shading themselves from both the heat of the sun and the hungry gaze of seagulls. Bull kelp and sea sacs dance and collide in the breaking waves. Even the rocks are painted in rosy shades, such as the bright pink coralline algae that serves as food to many of the chitin, limpets, and snails. Without these different plants, the animals living in and amongst the pools could not thrive. People wandering along the shoreline collect treasures of natural origin: shells, corals, stones, sand dollars, and goose barnacles. And occasionally, they'll find such overseas waste, from home fishing gear and sonar labels to plastic bottles with Chinese, Japanese, and Korean characters. In general, their lack on the beach and in the food chain of marine animals has much more value. Unfortunately, more and more whales have been thrown on the beaches in the past few years. Since 2000, a record number of whales have been released off the Pacific coast of America. In 2019, in 6 months, there were more than 70, 21 in Washington state. For comparison, in 2018, there were 25 whale releases, and the average number was down 35. In 2000, over 100 whales lost their lives. Studies have shown that the reason was a change in conditions, mainly the rise in water temperature in the Pacific Ocean. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, declared an unusually high mortality rate among gray whales in 2000 and 2019. However, don't worry too much. Scientists say that with the ban on whaling, their population is now reaching its maximum. Because whales are harder to feed, young animals have to travel a lot further north to feed. Many whales return to the south exhausted. However, studies show that the rapid melting of ice in the Arctic could lead to the desalination of water and reduce the number of algae. Algae is food for amphipods, relatives of shrimp. Amphipods are the main source of food for whales. In nature, everything is connected by invisible knots. The La Push area is one of Washington's most undervalued jewels due to the wildlife, incredible ocean views, and beautiful coastal forests. After taking a closer look of the sea stacks, let your eyes drift past the breaking waves toward the sea stacks sitting off the coast. This area is the Quillute Needles National Wildlife Refuge, the central refuge of the three, along with Flattery Rocks and Copalis, which make up the Washington Maritime National Wildlife Refuge Complex. Consisting of 870 overwhelming islands, rocks, and reefs, this refuge complex stretches over 100 miles along the wildest and remote stretches of the Washington coast. From Cape Flattery to Copalis Beach, the Washington Maritime National Wildlife Refuge Complex is shielded from human disturbance and is an incredibly abundant source of ocean food. During the months of March and April, this marine sanctuary sees over 20,000 gray whales slowly swimming across giant sea piles. This area is also home to 14 species of seabirds and is a major stopover for migratory birds. During the migration months, total seabird, waterfowl, and shorebird populations easily exceed 1 million birds. The refuge, which is only visible from the shore, is located within the boundaries of the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary and the Olympic National Park, and is incorporated into the Washington Islands wilderness. The Quillute Needles are often described as dagger-shaped rock formations. But few people know that there is really only one rock that is considered to be the Quillute needle. Rising 85 feet up from the Pacific Ocean, the Quillute needle is one of the most unique sea stacks on the Washington coast. The needle is easily noticed, as it is the most southernmost of the group of sea stacks near the shore. Climbing up like a sharp, pointed needle, the bait of this sea stack is just 35 feet in diameter. Because this is such an iconic rock, the entire group of offshore rocks in this region has informally become known as the Quillute Needles. Imagine that in a park you will find almost side by side the Pacific coast, mountains and rivers, glaciers and lakes, and several species of rainforests. Deciduous cover in local rainforests supports 25% of global insect species and 50% of plant species. It's not surprising that naturalist William Bibb called these forests the continent of life, and modern scientists call these forests organic nurseries. The biodiversity in Olympica is amazing. The warm, damp environment of the forests contributes to the prosperity of the flora and fauna. The 100-kilometer stretch of the park is the largest section of coast in the northwestern United States, which has remained untouched by civilization. Scientists believe that some of this natural wealth has not been known to humans yet. Let's imagine you're standing on the shore and watching the relics of the rocky headlands, listening to the power of the Pacific Ocean as it beats incessantly on the ancient rocks. When you first see the rugged and wild Olympic coast, it will be remembered forever. Your first look at the mighty Pacific Ocean when it is rustling against the backdrop of isolated sea cliffs. When the salty air touches your face and the bald eagles whirl over your head, the first look at the new beach is like first love. The head is becoming light. The legs begin to faint. This place has forever left its mark on your memory. From the coast, you can feel the spirit of the Pacific Northwest. The steady drumbeat of the waves against the tree-lined sea pillars is reminiscent of a steady heartbeat, a rhythmic pounding, as it has been for thousands of years. The same heartbeat experienced by ancient Cobalt tribes thousands of years ago. The pulse of the Pacific Northwest begins on these coasts. For those who are lucky enough to see this place with their own eyes, it is a touching experience. Along the beaches of the Olympic coast, the time is being forgotten. City life is quickly fading, and the power of the Pacific Ocean is forever breathtaking. In front of you is the whole range of diversity of the coast of the American Northwest. When you look at the ocean, it seems that in front of you is a whole world full of natural wonders.